Welcome everyone on Innovation Coffee, the podcast that talks about the idea that we shape the world of tomorrow. And I'm your host with the other three. I'm Pietro calling from Berlin.
Marco calling from Como in Italy.
I'm Davide calling from Asti in Italy.
And I'm Marco and I'm calling from Treviso.
Nice, and our guests of today are going to be Marco and Javier. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks. My name is Javier Nadal. I'm calling from Warwick in the UK.
Mute. Yeah, and I'm Marco. I'm from Ravenna right now, but I'm working in Milan.
Nice, amazing. Thank you so much for joining us. And today's episode wants to explore together with Marco and Javier, who will share the experiences at BlueThink. The episode is part of a series of episodes that talks about the actors that catalyzes the innovation. And today's we are going to explore in particular how to go from a product to an idea actually to a product with the engineering Rigour. And we invited BlueThink because it's a very special consulting company where 20% of the employees hold actually a PhD from an engineering field. So very interesting. And I see that we have some live. So let's start. We have some questions and the conversation is going to be hopefully interesting.
Okay, perfect. So thank you, Pietro, for the introduction. So our first question is related to your your methodology and approach when you start one of your projects. So as Pietro mentioned, you combine design thinking with deep engineering expertise. So the first question is related to what takes to bring a technologically complex idea to life. So what are the different steps and how do you normally approach when you start a new project?
Well, this is a very interesting question because, it really involves the way we are. So let's say that first, it's important to see what are, let's say, the pillars, the enabling points that make this bring it into life possible. So I would say that we couldn't do that without, first of all, a team of great engineers coming from all the different branches of engineering and science that are really able to work together day by day and putting at stake their skill set, both in terms of hard skills and soft skills. And so in projects, there's an electronic engineer, a biomedical engineer, a materials engineer, a material scientist, maybe working together, putting their sensibilities and points of view at stake. And in this way, enlarging our perspective and our horizon. Of course, this is not enough. There's a second pillar, which is the methodology. We have developed some methods that, based on our experience, are good at efficiently and quickly bringing ideas into objects that can be tested and then further developed so that they can reach the market in a relatively short time. But then there are two other pillars that are more related to technology. So the first is that we have laboratories. So in Milan, even though, let's say, we are in an area full of bunkers and insurance companies and so on, and standard consultancies, we have some facilities where we can really play with technologies, try our ideas, make experimental campaigns, and so really get prototypes or physical objects that embodies the ideas that we are trying to put into life. And finally, within the, let's say, open innovation environment in which we are since the founding of the company, we have also developed what we call a solvers network. So what is that? It's basically a network of partners, startups, university spin-offs, small research centers, each one of them developing maybe a new material, an optimized algorithm, a new production technique. We know each other, we know really well what they're doing. And on the one side, we can further exploit their experimental capabilities by working inside their labs. And at the same time, they are like a source of technologies, of building blocks through which we can really design and then put into life our solutions. Of course, these are the pillars. So the team, the methods, the labs, and the solvers network. But on these pillars, each time we build a new solution, of course, by applying a few steps that are, let's say, the way from which we go to. I mean, the step through which, starting from the assertion of a problem, we get finally to the final result. Again, 4 phases. we like number 4. So the first 2 are, let's say, diverging. So it's our way to put into practice a philosophical principle, which is that a problem cannot be solved within the frame in which it is said, it is described. So we try to go on a more general more general point of view. We deconstruct the problem. We understand deeply what it's made of. And so at that point, once we are in a bigger framework, we can really understand the nature of the problem. We can make the first step, which is the strategic design. So the imagination of a solution that really face the general problem we've understood. And at that point, we know what the, let's say, final ideal result will be. But then a final ideal result, an idea of a project or of a solution is not yet something you can touch, of course. So second step of the diverging phase is finding the technologies that can indeed solve those issues. And so we make a very wide research within our solvers network, within our partners in the universities, and within, of course, our knowledge. And so we find a wide variety of possible solutions that are solving that issue. The ones that are the most promising go forward to the 2 converging phases, in which at that point we start having something physical that we touch. So the most promising technologies are then, or the main promising clusters of technologies are then experimented in labs through simulations, through modelizations, and then go to a phase of engineering and prototyping, in which we make many different prototypes. Let's say, taking some ideas from the agile software development. So we cut our problem into smaller pieces. We first probe those aspects that are the most difficult the most crucial, let's say. And then we either have a go or a no-go decision for those technologies. Once we have a full working prototype, which is not yet the final product, we then go to the final step, which is the support to industrialization, in which, of course, we help our customers making that prototype something that is sustainable for its economic assets and for its production lines. So really, we go through these steps from the issue, the problem. So from a sentence, from a hope, from something that is really, really fuzzy to something that is really, really practical, concrete, physical. And we like this kind of thing, of course, and it wouldn't be possible if we wouldn't have those 4 pillars that are really the base of this path we go through.
Yeah, it's very important in a few words to hit a balance between the creativity and the technical expertise, and our experience on the whole methodology that Marco was describing is just about that, balancing creativity and expertise to make sure that you cast a net wide enough to capture the interesting technologies that might be outside the usual application range of whatever the product or service is, and that you're creative enough to take that step back and understand the actual context of the problem or the challenge. But then you need to then capture those technologies, capture those ideas, everything, and turn them into something you can actually make into a product or a service or something. So you need to have that balance between creativity and technical expertise in order to get something that is truly innovative, but can at the same time be made and be useful. So it's just how that balance is adjusted at each step of the creation process. It's what all our methodology and our expertise, it's what really brings into the added value to our clients.
So it sounds very, very interesting and challenging, like to bridge these 2 sides. On the one hand, of the unstructured world of creativity, and the other, the very, like, I would say, tabular form world of engineering and execution. And so thinking about your clients, and that I guess they are like, most of them are like industry leaders with wide pockets, wide R&D budgets. And how comes and why, with such budgets and such resources, do they need an external help? And in particular, how can you help them, maybe with your view and your approach?
Right. So that's a very interesting question that we actually get a lot. And the truth is that we act as an extension to their R&D teams. And the reason why that works and they're happy to do it is because we bring a quickly and scalable, very useful extension. So for example, we bring new expertise. So a client might need to develop a product or a service into an area they don't manage yet. So they need new expertise, new people, new labs, and very, very quickly we can ramp that up for them so they can get that expertise, that labs, those facilities, either within ourselves or within our solvers network. So the solvers network is a very important one. It's access to a network of about 300 companies that are already working on very niche, very interesting technologies. Just like that, in a second, you can get a new team, get a new lab, get access to that network very, very quickly. And that's very interesting to them. Then there's also a matter of resources. Sometimes they already have all their resources committed to different projects, but they need to work on a new one, on increase the resources on a project. And well, as everyone knows, getting new people in, getting new labs built, it's not something you can do very quickly. And it's not something you might always want to do. It might be a spike in work you have because 2 projects, one is coming to an end, the other one is starting, and then you need to cover both resources. So you need for a period of time someone to help you, an extra lab, extra people. So that gap is what we start bridging, is those spikes in work, as well as the lack of knowledge or the lack of expertise in a certain area. All that together with the solvers network. And and in the long run, because we are not just a consultancy, we act as an extension to the R&D team. After we start working with a company for a while, we become very used to their products, their services, their way of working. So we act as a real extension. So it becomes very, very effective for them to work with us. And that's the reason why we have so much repeat customers, so many partnerships, as we like to call them, because we keep working with them and the products evolve, and we become that real extension to the R&D team, which is the reason why they work with us. But besides these big R&D large companies, we've been working a lot with startups as well. And the reason is ironically very similar, because they are companies with a huge need for innovation, for teams, for labs, but they don't have them because obviously they're new. So by coming and working with us, they can, just like that, get a team that is already functional, working, multidisciplinary. They can get access to different expertise as they need them. So if today they need a little bit of materials, we pull in a materials engineer. If tomorrow they need electronics, we pull in an electronics engineer. If there's some testing to be done, then we can go down to the lab, create the test. So it gives them a lot of flexibility to very quickly ramp up their development cycle and bring it to prototypes. It also gives them access to the solvers network again, which it's very, very useful for them because they don't really have, not always of these sector expertise or links with other companies. So these ramps up their access to universities, access to other companies across the world, which is very, very useful. And in many cases, especially in the cases where we've worked with those companies before, it really helps investors as well, gives them confidence in that they know that if they've worked with BlueThink in the past, which has happened, they get confidence that the team that's working on their investment, it's a capable one. It's one that has already proved to be capable of delivering products, delivering services. So it gives them that extra confidence. And it gives them confidence because it's a very dynamic resource. So they don't have big investments put into teams or labs or anything. It's all very, very, very quick to turn on and turn off and scale, which gives them that extra boost to get to the market quickly, which is exactly what they want when they are in the startup phase. Yeah.
Yeah, and if I can add one thing based on my experience, one other reason why some customers get to us is that sometimes they look for different ways of thinking. I mean, you know, a packaging company, which is maybe world leader, or an automotive company as well, know really well how to do things within their industry, and they are the top. But sometimes to really disrupt the market, to really make a difference, to make an impact with respect to the competitors, it is necessary, as I was saying at the beginning, to look the problem from a different perspective, because maybe there are other ways of solving or facing that issue that are outside of the common way of thinking within that industry. And in that case, here we are. We are able, of course, since we are so open and so, let's say, industry agnostic, to find solutions, to find ways of thinking that really make a difference and make the solution of our clients different and remarkable with respect to that of the competitors. And so in this way also, companies that are, yes, a great R&D, a great expertise, great knowledge, sometimes need a brand new, a fresh perspective on the problems they face.
Yeah, I'll give you an example. We had a big company coming to us saying, "Oh, I need a cheaper battery. I need a cheaper battery for my application." We said, "Okay, fine. We'll look into it." But the first thing we did was understand that actually they don't need a cheaper battery. They need a better energy storage solution, which is not the same question. The first one tells you have to look for a battery, which they had done already. They had other companies look for batteries for them, and their solution was. So we said, okay, we'll look into it. First thing we did was change the question. So the question is not get cheaper batteries, is get me a better energy storage solution. And that changed the problem completely. We started looking, found different technologies, found different applications, and proposed something that was completely different to what they were looking for in a good way. And that added a massive value to their R&D efforts, because now they have the opportunity to very, very easily disrupt the market by introducing really good new solutions that it's not what they were actually looking for. And that's where the value of this new perspective comes into play.
Very interesting, very interesting.
I agree on the fact that's very interesting, and I wanted to build on this. So basically, Marco and Javier, thank you very much for your contribution. But you just mentioned two very important points to me. The first one is BlueThink's ability to be industry agnostic. And on the other hand, you also mentioned your ability to change the question, which to me spells like being very deep, like expert and deep in the matter, because you really have to know what's going on in order to come up with different solutions they haven't thought about. So my question is, how do you coach and train your, let's say, your employees, the blue thinkers, to have this double direction, so being industry agnostic but still straight to the point in order to be able to change the question?
Yeah, that's another great question indeed, and something we put a lot of effort into. So let's say that first of all, we choose really carefully our engineers, our blue thinkers. So what should a blue thinker have? A very, let's say, well mixed intertwining of different abilities. So we look for, of course, from the very early selection and recruiting stages, people with a very solid and rigorous academic backgrounds from the best universities that are in Italy or outside of Italy, usually with international experience, so that how can I say, even from a personal point of view, they are able to deal with the complexity and different point of view. But then we also look for people that have some kind of imagination and creativity, and you can really say it from the interviews you do with people, because usually we propose some, let's say, cases which really are thought and conceived to test at the one side the analytical skills, and on the other side the capability of being creative and to imagine something out of the box. So first we take people with this let's say inner capability of be a blue thinker. Then of course we train them a lot. We train them a lot in two ways. So on the one side, we really want each of them to be diverse and to have something that is made available for the whole company. So we ask each one of our engineers to develop throughout their careers what we call a magic tool. So it may be a software, or I don't know, a skill like patent analysis or market analysis or whatever. Something, of course, that is something related with the kind of jobs we do, but that is something interesting for our engineers, so that it's really like a passion that can grow with him and with his career, and that that particular engineer makes available for the whole company, so that when maybe we need to have a patent analysis, we know who's the expert inside, and we ask him, okay, we have this problem, can you help us for this? So each one of them is really exposed also to a variety of projects and of situations, and they are able to abstract and to find connections really way easily. Then, apart from that, that is really, let's say, on a personal level, we organize our jobs and our projects so that each one of our engineers typically works on at least 2 projects when they are on inner projects. One maybe is closer to their base expertise, so maybe a mechanical engineer works for a automotive project, but there's always another project which is maybe a little bit far from its expertise, from its background, that makes him challenged, and also makes him giving a contribution to which is different to that is typically within that kind of project. So since each one of our engineers work in this way, and the week by week we have this distribution of products within our engineers, one can really develop a wide expertise, and have a number of different projects he worked with. And in this way, again, the mind opens. That's it.
Yeah, just to do a little bit more of a point on training, for example, it's a combination between on-the-job training, let's call it, and formal training. So going back to what Marco was saying of the tool, the special tool each one of us has. I'll give you just a quick example. I've used LabVIEW for 8-9 years now, so I've used it in different projects in different sectors, and one of the projects we're working at now has a test rig that needs a user interface and needs a control algorithm for the whole of the test and the rig in general. So I propose we do it in LabVIEW because it's exactly what LabVIEW's been created for. And one of our colleagues didn't have LabVIEW expertise. He knew how to use Python, for example, but not LabVIEW itself. So we came up with the idea of him developing it, but I'll support him. So that's in that way, whatever, in this case, one of my key knowledge is, it gets transmitted into the wider team and it starts training other people in that. So I did a little bit of a master class with that. Then he started with a project, and now we work together every day, every other day. But we're coming to the end of this project, and now he has a new skill set. He can now program in LabVIEW, which is, well, obviously I think so, but it's very, very useful in this area, and it's very, very useful to create test rigs. So that's a bit of an informal training, but it's been very, very useful. And then at the same time, we run formal training sessions. So a couple of months ago, 2-3 months ago, we ran a new edition of the design of experiment testing, which is basically a formal way, a structured way to understand how to test something. So when you have to test a prototype, there's parameters you want to test, and there's what this methodology calls noise factors, which is parameters that you cannot control, basically. So how do you choose what you test, how you test it, how many you test of each? There's a whole methodology based on statistics that tells you what is the best combination of parameters that you can choose in order to do a test that is statistically significant and reduces the amount of tests you have to do. Then that gives you an idea of which are the most important parameters that you then choose for sensitivity analysis. And in that way, you do a very structured testing campaign where you know what you're testing, you know what's most important, and you reduce the number of tests you have to do. And that was a formal training that we run across. So there's a number of the BlueThinkers that went through that. But the interesting thing is that they are already passing it on to colleagues.
Others.
Yes. So within this project we're working at, we had one of them that had done the training and had applied it to a project. So he coached another one on how to do it. And that way, now we have another person that knows how to do it. And in that way, the knowledge, and that's the value on what Marco was saying of mix and matching people in different projects and different skills. They learn from each other a lot, and you learn from the client as well. You learn from your colleagues, from your managers. So that continuous change in who you're working with and which project you're working with and the sector in which it comes kind of brings on that knowledge exchange, which is fantastic to see.
And sorry, can you say that by choosing the right people, you make sure that knowledge is cascading through all the levels? So like you start from that magic tool, that specific capability that then through passion and like inner drive gets passed through to other colleagues. Is that the point? Absolutely.
And the key in choosing that right people is, as Marco was saying, it's a blend, a mixture of skill sets. And one of them is the ambition and the drive. And it's just about saying, and this, for example, the LabVIEW example I was giving is this colleague, earlier on, we were doing a simulation. So I ran the simulation on LabVIEW. So I showed him how it was done. And he just went, wow, this is amazing. I want to learn how to do this. And that shows that he's driven, he wants to learn. And it also, it's an incentive for me to say, you know what, if you're this eager to learn, I'll teach you, I'll show you how to do it. Because I think it's great. I'm driven, you're driven, we're both ambitious. Let's do it. You can learn how to do this. And it's worked fantastically. It's been great. And that's a big part of how the Blue Thinkers build this flexibility, this knowledge. It's just by working with other very ambitious, very talented people, basically.
Amazing, thank you so much. I think we have a very good timing for some question. There is one coming from also the live, and it's about the fact that oftentimes the consultants are working externally, and in your case is like most probably like you're developing like huge and very deep expertise on the company. How do you manage this balance between like external contributors with being very involved in the projects of the companies?
So let's say that first of all, we try to alternate external experiences with internal experiences. I mean, on a medium term at least, both the experiences are of course lived by each one of our engineers. Then, of course, we put into practice some ways so that there is still like intermixing between who is, of course, really focused on the specific project that the customer at the premises of which is working requires, and the people that are working inside. Let's say that. This is part of my job, for example, of Javier's job, because we are responsible for these teams of consultants that are at the premises of the customers, and so we really try to make as many opportunities as possible to make sharing something real. For example, we periodically organize what we call Blue Days, in which people present what they're working at the premises of the customer, and in this way, really, discussion and sharing can be fostered. Different point of view can come from both the people that are working internally and the people that are working externally, and this really gives something added as an added value to both.
Can you give an example about that?
We had a team working on a project for industrial optimization for production. So the team was developing an algorithm to optimize which products should be produced within a company to make the best use of the resources within that production facility. And then they shared that in one of these sharing days. And I picked up on it and identified the possibility to, with a little bit of creativity, turn it around and apply it to a different project. And that gave birth to a partnership with a startup here in the UK that has developed a fantastic system to monitor the energy consumption of telecom towers. So remotely logging into each tower, in this case, they're working in South Africa, for example, you pick up the information, you optimize the algorithm, use a little bit of machine learning to predict what the load will be in the next 48 hours, and then you choose which energy source you're going to use. Are you going to go on batteries? Are you going to use the grid, diesel generator, in order to minimize the cost and the CO2 emissions? And that's, at the core of it, is a similar algorithm that has been rethought, and that it's only possible because we started sharing. So in this case, we've gone on a trip where an application was born in a sector in Italy, and it's gone all the way across Europe to the UK to a different application that it's actually being applied in South Africa. And that's where the value of going across sectors and going across different countries, that's where the real value comes from.
And Javier, I'd like to connect to this question with a very brief one. So also at the beginning, you mentioned that the way you operate is that you're trying to leverage this solvers network. Which now I'd like to connect with the geographical dispersion you just mentioned. So is the smart working concept somehow helping you reach out also to people you would have never thought about collaborating with before? So is there the case that you might be working with someone in Australia just because now we're trying to be more also working from remotely kind of things?
Not really in a good way. We have been quite flexible for some time now, and we've been working. So I work in the UK. There's other teams working in Italy. Within Italy, there's teams working in Milan, in Turin, Bologna, different companies. So we've been very much used to this smart working and collaborating, and being a relatively open company. We've been at the looking for solvers and different companies. So we've been doing that for a while. Obviously, the upside of this whole pandemic working from home is that other people are more willing to do it, and in a way, not from our side, but probably yes from the other side.
More
so
demand side, if you so want. Yeah.
Yes, and it's also funny that you've realized, well, many companies have realized how much the meetings they are constantly going to are not really needed, and that frees up time for people to do other things, like connecting with other companies, like evaluating different possibilities, like, and that gives them more time to connect, to speak, to think, which is that aspect has indeed been great. It gives more time for people to connect, to speak, to think, to use this creativity into, okay, what can we do now? I had one of our longtime clients call me and say, I found myself with that, you know when you're doing, well, one day I'll have time to do this one day. So I think that day has come. So what did we say we were going to do when the time comes? So that's a perfect example. I have that time now. The time is now. Let's talk. What do we want to talk about? So yes, in a way, yes.
Yeah, thank you so much, Javier and Marco. I think we touched like several points, from like the importance of balancing creativity and technical expertise to get something that is truly innovative but also feasible. Also, like we touched like on how work as an extension of corporates helps them to catalyze innovations, even though you're still external contributor, and how important also is like hiring people with inner capabilities and then keep training them based on their personal individual passions, and enable them to build these magic tool that you mentioned. I think like the stories and the contribution of this discussion were very insightful. Thank you so much. I'd like to point out that from the discussion of today, emerged very clearly that technology and dealing with technology always involves facing very tough challenges, especially when you want to live up to ambitious goals. And these challenges of tech can be solved only by unfolding things to their fundamental truths. And you basically need to work by first principles that comes very much from the physics and the engineering world, the very technical ones, and involves like getting things to the bottom and working from the very certain truths and then build from them. So I think a very insightful episode of Innovation Coffee. So thank you so much, Marco and Javier.
Thank you for having us. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Very appreciate your time.
Interesting.
Yeah, very appreciate your time, and also thank you to the audience live.
Thanks.
And
Thanks for having us. It was a great pleasure.
Absolutely. And hope that also the audience enjoying the Innovation Coffee episode. I like to wrap up like this, and see you next episode. Thank you so much, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye. Bye.